Hello, my name's Shamoon Dean. I'm going to show you some of the functions of the AVer Visualiser. So let's do a capture of what we have beneath the visualizer. I've got an image here, or a worksheet, on 12 ways that the visualizers are creating a revolution in schools. So with one touch of the remote, I can press the capture key, and I've got a capture straight onto the device. AVer Visualisers will capture up to about 80 JPEG images on their internal memory. I could use a USB stick or an SD card, and I can capture to those. Or I could actually plug in my laptop or PC and capture directly to the hard drive using the software. Once I've got my captures, it would be wonderful if I can play them back. So I'm going to use the playback key on the remote control to bring up my thumbnails of all the playback images that I've got stored on the internal device. So here I can now select using the enter key, and I can bring them up full screen. But more importantly, I can actually manually cycle through them. And this works brilliantly if I've got work that I want to review with my students, or perhaps I've got examples of really good work, or perhaps anonymous examples of poor work, which enables my students to see exactly what it is that I require for them. Okay, let's go back to the playback menu. It's not just playback that I might want. I might actually want to run a slideshow directly from the visualizer. So this time I'm going to use the slideshow button, and I'm going straight into a slideshow. And I can actually change the way the slideshow appears. So let's go back to playback, and this time I'll press the menu button. When I'm in menu, I can actually begin to change the way the slideshow appears. So first of all, I'm going to go to interval, and I'm going to drop the interval down to 5 seconds. I'm then going to go to effect, and I'm going to move the effects over so that the images come across from the left-hand side. And I'd like them full screen. Once I'm happy with that, I'm going to move back up to slideshow, press enter, and press run. And now I've got each one of my slides looping. This works brilliantly where perhaps I've got a sequencing activity and my students need to look up every now and then to see what the next step was in terms of the equipment we set up. Or perhaps they need to review the data or the ideas that we discussed as they write up their work. Perhaps I've got articles just to stimulate their memory. Okay, so that's slideshow. Let's have a look at some of the other features that we've got on the AVer standalone functionality. I'm going to press the green button to come out of playback, and I'm back to my thumbnail. So if I press now the camera button, I'm back to my live image. There might be a reason that I need to split the screen, perhaps for comparison work. So I'm going to press split screen, and you'll notice now that my image splits into half. On the right hand side I've got the live image, and on the left hand side I've got my selection of thumbnails, and I can select from any one of these which one I might want. So I'm actually going to select this diagram here, and it could well be, as I pan that diagram across the screen, that on the right hand side I'm modelling or simulating something to do with that diagram, and my students can follow exactly what we're doing. Perhaps I've got an exam question which my students are undertaking on the right hand side, and we've got the mark scheme on the left hand side. Any number of options are available to us in terms of comparison. If I press the split screen button again, you'll notice that I go back to my thumbnail, but then I can actually rotate the live portion clockwise around the image. So now I've got the live portion horizontally across the bottom of the screen. If I press split screen again, it's now gone to the left hand side. Once again, it's now horizontal across the top, and then if I press it again, it'll toggle off and I'm back to the live image. But it's not just splitting the screen that counts. I can also select picture in picture, the pip button. If I select the pip button, I now have the option of manually flicking through my thumbnails in the corner of a screen. So let's say I've got my keywords which I want my students to fill in on the missing gap sheet that I've got under the live image. I could manually flick through those keywords. In fact, if I press the PIP button again, I can actually change the position of where the picture in picture appears. I prefer it to have it up in the right hand corner. And you can see there, I'm now going to flick through manually the various thumbnails that I've got on the device. Once I'm happy with the picture in picture and I want to switch it off, I'm just going to toggle it so it goes to the bottom right hand corner, press it once again, and it disappears. Okay, back to the live image. This time we're going to have a look at Spotlight and the screen shade. So on your remote control, you'll have a Spotlight key. If I select the Spotlight key, I come up with a little menu. First of all, I need to switch it on. Then I need to change the shade. So I'm going to select the shade and I'm going to increase it to 100%. And then I'm going to select the green color for the border. And then I'm going to press OK. You'll see now that I've got a flashing box with a green border. I can use the up and down arrow keys and the left and right arrow keys to increase or decrease the size of that particular box. So because I've got a table behind, I'm going to increase it so the cell size matches the size of my box, and now I can highlight their attention on specific cells that I want them to have a look at. Incidentally, whilst I'm actually in that Spotlight mode, if I press the zoom button, I can actually expand that piece of text so we can see it whole screen. To get rid of AVerBox, I simply need to press the AVerBox or the Spotlight button again, and it disappears. Moving on to the screen shade or AVer Visor, if I press that, same thing, I can switch it on and then I can change the shade up to 100%. This time I'm going to leave it at 50%. Press enter, press OK, and now I've got the ability to move a slide left to right and also one down the screen. I find this quite useful in terms of classroom management. Sometimes when the students come in after lunch, they can be a little boisterous. By just having the AVer Visor set up like this, I can just focus their attention and get them to write down the date and the title so that we can get a start to the lesson. To get rid of AVer Visor or the screen shade, I simply press the AVer Visor button. One of the unique features about AVer Visualisers is the ability to record video with sound directly to the device as a standalone device without the need for software. So I can either use a USB stick or an SD card and insert it into the visualizer. Flick the switch from PC mode across to USB mode and have the ability to record video using the one-touch recording facility. So it's one touch on the recording button, and you'll see now instantly that I've got my counter up in the top left-hand corner, which means that I'm now recording beneath the visualizer. When I want to stop recording, all I need to do is press the recording button again. So this gives me the option of being able to record anything that I'm doing beneath or in front of the camera. It could be annotating text in a lesson, sharing ideas, perhaps going through somebody's work with them. Ideal for peer mentoring or AFL. One of the nice things about this is that I can assess pupils who perhaps don't assess well with pen and paper. For example, how about we had an accelerated learning card game beneath the visualizer, where I've got a student actually placing labels in the correct place on a living graph, say, and then I'm able to assess them, given that I can record not only what they're doing, but also record their reasoning as well. In fact, why not record a little 2-minute how-to? How do we set up a certain type of apparatus, for example, or take readings from certain equipment? Finally, some colleagues are actually recording best practice in terms of peer observation for Ofsted. Once I've actually undertaken the recording, I need to play back the recording, and with the AVer Visualiser I can record the recording directly off the USB stick or the SD card through the device. So I'm going to press the playback button and you'll see that my recording actually shows up as a thumbnail with an arrow in it highlighting that that's actually a video recording. So I'm going to select that, and then I'm going to press enter again, and we can actually see the recording. Now if I'd got my speakers plugged into the 3.5mm jack on the side of the unit, I could actually have the sound as well. But more importantly, now that I've got the recording on a USB stick or an SD card, I can actually take that recording and add it straight to the VLE, or perhaps a portion of the school intranet where my students can have access to it. Hello, my name's Shamoon Dean. I'm going to show you some of the functions of the AVer Visualiser. So let's do a capture of what we have beneath the visualizer. I've got an image here, or a worksheet, on 12 ways that the visualizers are creating a revolution in schools. So with one touch of the remote, I can press the capture key, and I've got a capture straight onto the device. AVer Visualisers will capture up to about 80 JPEG images on their internal memory. I could use a USB stick or an SD card, and I can capture to those. Or I could actually plug in my laptop or PC and capture directly to the hard drive using the software. Once I've got my captures, it would be wonderful if I can play them back. So I'm going to use the playback key on the remote control to bring up my thumbnails of all the playback images that I've got stored on the internal device. So here I can now select using the Enter key, and I can bring them up full screen. But more